November 8th, 2025. This is the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Tanya, can you verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay. We're now at the section of our meeting where there's an opportunity for public comment. Do we have any in the public who have signed up to speak?
We do not.
We do not. All right, moving into our action items. The first action item for this evening would be the approval of minutes. Mrs. Voigt.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mrs. Voigt, seconded by Mr. Harland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Our next action item for this evening is the approval of vouchers. Did we have any questions this month?
Yes, we did. We had a question regarding the South HVAC costs, whether or not the entire amount of the over $1 million was for South HVAC, and yes, it was. Also, a question regarding the GMP process for billing. I reached out to Kyle McCarthy, and our facilities manager. He stated that GMP is guaranteed maximum plus. It's a type of cost plus contract that sets a ceiling on the total project cost. So under a GMP contract, the contractor agrees to complete the project for no more than a specified maximum price, which includes both direct and indirect costs, the contractor's fee, and a contingency allowance. This gives the owner cost certainty, and if the project finishes under budget, the savings can be shared between the owner and the contractor.
And the project associated with this?
This is the HVAC work at
This is
South.
still two. The other, do we have one of these with the North Drainage Project, or was that just part of the easement agreement?
That was a 10% of total cost of construction. Construction costs only, not the soft costs, but true, with the $750,000 maximum.
But it was a similar concept, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The next question was regarding first student and the in excess of $700,000 invoice payment that was made. The question was related to the efficiency clause. The efficiency clause that was put into our contract is the route reduction savings incentive that's available to the contractor should a route reduction opportunity be realized. It's really an incentive to keep the route counts down.
I can provide a little history on that. I wasn't here, but when they bid out, I think it was in 2013, and they had been with Dairyland for maybe decades, a long time. When the RFP went out, it was for, I want to say like 135 routes. And then when First Student came in, they came to the board and said, I think it's about 112 or 110 routes, but they had bid on a much larger, so they created this incentive that if you keep routes low, we'll give you part of the savings from the original RFP. So what we've done the last couple of contracts is, so I think we started out at 125 or 130, somewhere in there. The next contract, it was 115 was the ceiling they had to stay under, and the board, you approved a couple years ago now, I believe it's under 80 routes. So we've also downsized it. They've created savings. In that contract, we kept the pressure on keeping routes lower for them to be able to save in the reduced number. So I think it's pretty solid in the situation we're in. I think it's been pretty good contract language for us.
The last question that I had was regarding the lease income at Richardson School. Contractually, in 2022-23, it was $220,000, and it will rise to $245,000 by 2026-27. Those are all the questions.
And then the follow-up from last month, right, is now, do you want to talk about the analysis that you presented the board?
I can certainly do that. In front of you, you have a purchasing analysis that includes Amazon. You'll see the first number on top, the $8 million. That is all P-card purchases from July of 24 to June of 25. Included in there, if you follow over to the right, included in there are Apple costs in excess of $300,000, Aramark, which is the largest cost there of $5.2 million, and then our Waukesha water costs are also included in the $8 million of $328,000. I then took a subset of data from July to October of '24 and July through October of '25 and did a comparison of the P-card transactions. You will see that in the 2,009,671 versus the 1.8 million. Just first quarter transactions, July to end of September, so that I could also look at it from a rebate perspective, was 1.745021 in 2024, and then the 1.384183 in 2025. You'll see that's a reduction of 360,000 plus. That reduction of the use of the P-card transactions is primarily because We Energies and Gordon Flesh prior to that had been on our credit card. We stopped using the credit card to pay for those because they started charging a processing fee. Then you will see with the rebates directly below that, we had received $26,125 in 2024 for the July through September timeframe, and then $18,995 for our rebate in 2025 for that same timeframe, a reduction of $7,000, which makes sense considering the fact that our expenses went down due to We Energies and Gordon Flesh no longer being included.
So who is the rebate through?
US Bank. That's who our credit card is through, our P card is through.
So for clarification, one of the
Yes.
questions that I think when we talked about the P card, it's been a while since we've talked about the process, but always the controls surrounding it. So when I take a look at, this is not insignificant spending.
Correct.
So who authorizes the spending? Where is the budget? How do we track it? Where are we going with that? What do we take a look at it? And especially when I start to take a look at the breakdown of Amazon on the website, it does beg the question, what is our process? Who orders? What are we ordering? Why are they ordering it? Where's the approval? Because often, obviously, in budgets for school districts, we're being asked to approve the vouchers after the spend. And so I'm asking at the front end,
Yep.
what are we doing to mitigate costs and what are they spending and where does all of that go? So that's really what I'm looking for. I think the numbers are quite telling.
Yes, so I started with the numbers, and I do have some additional information for you in that area. The secretaries receive authorization to make the purchases. They oftentimes are the hub or the main point person at the site to go ahead and utilize the Amazon website. Transactions then are processed through our P-card. Once the P-card is uploaded into Skyward, the business office does a review and approves the P-card transactions. And then the last approval is the budget owner. That is either the FACE teachers, the principal, the AD. They are the ones who then also approve it in Skyward prior to the payment being made to US Bank. And we are anticipating moving to e-commerce as part of the migration to Skyward Q, the cumulative product, in April of this coming year.
And that'll shift to more of a front-end approval. Appeal will be generated automatically. It's all interfaced with each other. So it'll move that approval process more to the front end where I think we'd all like that, but in the world of instant ordering, it's hard to keep up with that. So we're thinking Q will be the solution, by mid-April roughly.
So are they given a budget and do they track against their budget?
The principals have their own site budget, and they have that conversation with their secretaries who are then placing the orders.
So we budget not by the source of the purchase, but by, like art has its own account number and, math or whatever. So it's coded to the appropriate function or class, and then they work within those boundaries.
So if I said tonight when we talk about the preliminary budget development, do we have the ability to go that granular to see these budgets and where their actual spend is against these budgets?
Yeah, we can, if you run it by function number, which is more like the class, I guess is the equivalent description, we could run that by site, by class, if you'd like. Normally you see by object number, which tells you what it is rather than what class it's tied to. That's the numbers we use most often in the business office is the object number for projections and budget modeling and those types of things.
Okay.
So you would like a function report on all the vouchers for the given month? Is that an accurate
I
statement?
do. I think that I had asked initially just to change the Excel so that I
Yes.
can, just as, like, I have my own VLOOKUP, but in a quick spot where I actually want to look at stuff, I can't look at numbers and say I understand what this is without incorporating the schedule that I already built in. I think it's just helpful to not talk in numbers, to talk about in function. You can show the number and the description to it, that
Right.
doesn't matter, but I need to see what it is. But within that, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about as we start to talk about our operational budgets, where we're going, this is a kind of spend that I would be very interested in understanding what are we doing going forward. Mr. Wadd?
I'm just curious, about how many transactions a month are we talking about here district-wide? Do we know?
Not off the top
We
of
can
my
find out. I don't know the answer to that.
I guess the reason I ask is if we have someone who's putting eyes on them, right? The bigger the transactions, right, or the larger the number of transactions, the more difficult it can be to apply a level of scrutiny to it. So I guess I'd be curious to know the number of transactions we're talking about per month. And then do we have any edits or flags in the system that will flag based on dollar amount of a transaction or a type of a transaction that may invite a closer look or more scrutiny on a particular transaction, or?
I think the flags really are on the P card side of it. The way they're set up, the UPC code or the store code, like I can't run to Discount Liquor and buy, it's an extreme example for anyone who's watching. So we have those protections. There's also credit limits on the P card also. So that's really where the controls. Skyward itself really doesn't provide that, except for it will pop up if you're entering a PO, this account number is over budget by, $100 or whatever. But really the true scrutiny or the flagging on these transactions is really on the P card side, not the Amazon, not on the Amazon side. And Aramark just loves that we have them pay via P card. They're big fans of it. We talk about it very often, don't we, John?
I was going to ask.
It was in the RFP for the record. So it's just funny you're here while we're talking.
That was, and then right below there, just as one more quick note, you can see then specific Amazon purchases in relation to all of the transactions that occurred within this July to October timeframe. Those are specific to purchases that were made on Amazon. One item of note that I thought was just interesting is that the difference, so it increased, the usage increased. It increased, it looks like, primarily because IT got into the game and started purchasing a few things. And so these sites have been pretty even though some have gone up, it's really been pretty even in their spending.
Any other questions? Vouchers in general? If not, this is an action item, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motioned by Mr. Wadd, seconded by Mr. Harland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, passes 5-0. We are now moving into our discussion and information items for the evening, and our first topic is the Aramark Food Service Report.
Yeah, Tim and Molly are here from Aramark to give us our annual review of how the food service program is operating. The slide deck's in board docs for you if you want to follow along, otherwise we'll be projecting live. So I'll turn it over to them to introduce themselves and answer any questions you might have at the end,
Hi, everybody.
or as we go along.
If you don't remember me, I'm Tim Prendergast. I'm the food service director here in Waukesha. Thank you for having us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm Molly. I'm our district manager for Aramark, so I oversee our Wisconsin territory. So if you previously had met Jared Haxton, who was our director, and then kind of in my role, his territory shifted a bit, so still supports us in Airmark, but not over Waukesha. So I am kind of the oversight now and happy to be here. Nice to meet all of you.
How do I get my screen up on there now?
There we go.
Nope. Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So this will be very similar to the presentation we went through last year, update on participation numbers, meals per service day. Feel free to interject with any questions that you may have. So we broke this down. I broke every grade group level by breakfast and then lunch. So you see elementary breakfast numbers, then lunch, middle school breakfast and lunch, and so on. One thing to remember, which I'm sure you're all very, very aware of, there's an enrollment decrease in schools this year in Waukesha. So elementary was down 205 students versus last year versus prior year. That's 4.71%. Our elementary meals per service day, if you see MPSD, that's meals per service day, we're only down 15 from last year. So losing 205 kids and being down only 15 breakfasts, you would expect to see a much, much higher number. Our participation rate is around, I think, like 47%. So you'd expect to see, almost 100 kids less per day if the math stayed the same. If, you were taking away, participation rate stayed the same, took out 205 kids, you'd expect to see about 100 less per day there. And we're only seeing a decline of 15. So it's hard to characterize it as growth, but it is growth against what the curve would look like if you took the kids out. I think a lot of that is breakfast options that we're seeing. Hot breakfast got reintroduced last year, that was my understanding.
Yep.
And that seems to be popular. We're seeing breakfast go up across the board, which you'll see. I think maybe there's macroeconomic stuff driving that, parents sending their kids to school to get breakfast. They might find it cheaper, whatever that is. We haven't done anything drastically different. I mean, we try to grow meals every time we can to grow participation. But there are some things that I think are just larger trends going on that why you'll see those numbers. So you can see the schools are affected a little bit differently. Some have big decreases, some have increases, and some of this is just purely tied to how many kids each school had lost. I think Hawthorne had one of the biggest drops year over year, so that's reflected here, and them losing 15 kids a day at breakfast. If we go into elementary lunch, we are down 45 meals per day from last year, but again, we would expect to see a higher drop with the enrollment decline that we've seen. So we're 1,890 elementary lunches per day. If there's anything that you want to interject, feel free to.
We're good. I was just going to say if there's any questions as we go too, feel free to. This system here allows us to compare. I know that both Heather and Darren have seen it, but it's a campus metric system that allows us to kind of compare either year over year like we're doing here or compared to a budget number that we've projected, whatever the case is. So it really lets you kind of narrow in line by school to see, again, by breakfast, by lunch, you'll see as the presentation goes on. So if you have questions, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, and we can get granular with different sites over different periods, things like that. It's a great tool to have. Middle school breakfast. So down 31 meals, down 7 meals per day versus the prior year in breakfast, which is great, I would say. Horning had a big enrollment drop, so you're seeing a decline there, but every other school had an increase in their breakfast, which is good. We like to see the participation up. It's good to see. And then lunch, we're at about the same rate, down 28 meals per service day there. You can see the graph at the bottom. There's some fluctuation based on the prior year. The orange line is the prior year. I can't really explain what those fluctuations are. I think sometimes it's weather, not a great day for weather. There's a ton of snow or something like that. But it's kids sick or, if the flu ran through that week, things like that can cause the variance there. Yep. High school breakfast. We're having huge success in high school breakfast.
I'm sorry, before we move on from the middle school,
Yep.
I guess I'm a little surprised to see that we're serving so many more breakfasts at middle school than lunches. Am I reading those numbers right?
No, so if you look at, we're serving 451 middle school breakfasts per day. It's the bottom of the middle school breakfast.
That's it, morning.
No, that's morning.
Oh, sorry.
This is saying that we're doing
1,653.
as
Breakfast.
opposed to 1,100 lunches. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I know our breakfast is up compared to lunch. Like breakfast where we saw a big, kind of increase year over year. So I think that is right.
We're seeing, but that would be significantly different than what we see in elementary and in high school.
I think there may be an issue with that.
Because I know your breakfast was up significantly.
Elementary breakfast,
general. We could take a look at that.
1160. Lunch would be 1890. I can pull it.
We could pull it up in Campus Metrics now.
Yeah, I could pull it. I have it right here.
Yep. That's a good question. 1653.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
Sure. Because if that's true, that would raise an interesting question as to
Yeah. No, absolutely.
at that particular grade level.
Yep. So you're looking at middle school breakfast and then middle school lunch, yeah.
Yeah, so we were September, October,
November, yep.
November.
Only, yeah.
Wish there was a deselect button.
Yes, only select middle school, yeah. Because, yeah, we took year-to-date, so it's November, October, November.
So this is just versus prior year, though. Breakfast meals per service day, 226.
Yeah, but that's totaling. That's how much you are, hang on, 98,000.
That's how much, no, because we're up 30, it's 226 per day, which makes a lot more
Does
sense.
lunch, flip to lunch really quick.
Yeah.
Is lunch does lunch match? I'm just curious if lunch is.
Oh, does lunch match? Oh, back in that
Even
presentation?
Prior years, yeah, no, that total can't, well,
I pulled this right from,
yeah, that's right.
so hold on, let's go back here.
1661, I mean, the verse prior year makes sense, that's why I'm kind of thrown off, the 1661
Lunch is
versus.
1140 versus 1225. It's, the data sets are slightly different because I didn't include the last week of November in mine. So yeah,
Sure.
the lunch is matching.
Yeah.
But the breakfast
But the
isn't.
breakfast is not, okay.
So here, so we can look at the actual data
Yeah,
here.
yeah, you can just,
226 meals per service day in breakfast, which is up 30 from last year.
yes, compared to prior year. Okay, so the data for middle school.
Oh, this isn't showing, sorry, I thought that this was showing
No,
for you
no,
all. Let
it's
me get
okay.
out of presentation
Yeah,
mode.
we can show the real campus metrics, so, but I wonder how even prior year is
So, and
wrong.
as I look at the chart
Yep.
below it, it looks like it's representing numbers just above 200 meals.
Which is what we're looking at,
Okay,
which is
all right.
correct, yes. So this is what the data was coming from, this metrics dashboard that we use, so the lunch looks correct, but the breakfast meals
The
per service
breakfast was
day.
up, so this year is up 113 breakfasts.
Total, yep, so
Total.
you're up 30. In your total
Oh,
meals per,
yep,
yep, you're up
30 it just in breakfast. I thought this
Yes.
had pulled just breakfast.
No,
Sorry.
you're fine.
There we go, 30.
So we're currently serving 226, it's 226 is the total, right? Yes, on the right-hand
226
side.
versus
Yep.
195 last
Yep.
year.
So that's the difference. So it is up, but the totals are wrong.
If you could you just update the slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, because even because the prior year column has 1168, was it? Yeah. Okay,
All right.
thank you for the question.
Sure, and you said the lunch numbers are correct though, right?
I believe
Yes.
so, we just looked at
Yep.
that. Yep, the 11, yeah,
The-
they're fresh in my mind, so as soon as we pull them up.
1140
Yep.
versus 1168.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean in campus metrics?
Yes, you had lunch,
It at 1225, but that included another.
the extra week.
Yep.
Yes, that was a little bit off, okay. So yes, lunch is correct, breakfast needs to be updated.
Okay, so high school breakfast?
High school breakfast is correct.
Yep, 231.
Yep,
Which is up 45 from the prior year.
yes.
So some of this I think is seeing that West has the largest growth. In breakfast, we activated a station that was dormant there for a little bit. It has a big garage door, and I think it was used before my time for like a grill burger station kind of thing. It had like a slide with all the sandwiches in it. And we repurposed that for breakfast because our numbers were, I mean, they're not great at any high school just by the nature of high schools, but West was trailing the rest of them. So West is seeing some catch up, I think, with higher visibility from that station. It's right next to the hallway where the kids go through to class. Yeah, sorry. Yep, I just checked that too. So that's driving some of the growth there. It's great to see more breakfast going on, especially at the high school level. I feel like that's normally where you fight the hardest to try and see some growth. So that's great to see breakfast there. The enrollment decline is the smallest in the high schools, I'm sure you're all aware, but there was still enrollment decline, so it's great to see that we're getting some growth and traction going in breakfast. And we're not really doing anything different from a menu perspective with the breakfast. We're doing what we've been doing in past years, or at least compared to last year.
Yeah, I will say one of the things that we talk about, I know monthly, are kind of the industry updates that have happened. And this year, coming down from the USDA, that the state then enforces is some additional reduction in breakfast products that we see. So like yogurt and cereal bars and
Reduction in
cereal.
sugar.
Yes, reduction in sugar, yes. And so sometimes we had sort of anticipated, like, was there a chance that breakfast participation could decrease because food might taste a little bit differently? The good news is that a lot of the K-12 or student nutrition providers like Kellogg's and General Mills and all that good stuff, they're usually pretty good about reformulating to make sure that they are compliant with the new guidelines. And we did roll those products out in the spring of last year, so the spring of 2025, in preparation for the 25-26 school year guidelines, where there was the additional reduction in sugar of an additional, I think it was an additional 10%. So again, the food for the most part really much, it tastes similar, but I think, in general, we were sort of anticipating kids could notice a difference in kind of either their favorite cereal or favorite cereal bar or favorite yogurt. And again, I think we were kind of ahead of the curve with introducing those products in the spring. And so again, there was a little bit of apprehension actually going into breakfast this year across the country, really, because again, some of the main products that we serve every day were reformulated just to meet the guidelines. So
I think that's what we fight a little bit too, because the products that we use, like the Lucky Charms that we give the kids, are not what they get in the store. They're formulated, they're whole grain, there's less sugar in them.
Yep.
So then kids come like, why are my Lucky Charms different? So that's another thing that we fight, but it hasn't, I think, been a big deal at any of the grade levels that I've seen.
Even like Pop-Tarts, which I know some people can sort of say like, gosh, you serve Pop-Tarts. Well, they're whole grain and they're significantly reduced sugar than what you would see. You wouldn't find them in the store shelves, even if you see kind of 25% lower sugar. It's not, they don't even sell them in a store. So again, they're specially formulated for K-12 and now have an even additional amount of reduced sugar in them. So when you actually compare like a whole grain donut or even compared to like a yogurt, the amount of added sugar is actually very similar in kind of a lot of your breakfast items that you see, which usually hover around like 6 grams or so. So sometimes the perception from a parent perspective or a teacher or even a student.
Principals.
Sometimes you'd be surprised at, really what the amount of sugar or lack thereof that's in food, especially at breakfast, so.
Moving to lunch, we are up 39 meals per service day over last year at the high school level. I was surprised to see this. I thought that we would have seen decline. I'm not hearing anything, much different from the leads at the high schools. I think one thing that's interesting to note here is that we've grown identical amounts at West and North in 5 meals per day growth, but South has 28 meals per day there. I can't say exactly what that's all attributed to, but I do think having the pod that we installed over there at the other end of the school is having an effect there. We saw some of that last year, and I think that that's continuing through this year. Again, correlation's not always causation, but that's my gut check and talking to staff over there that is helping spur some more sales. And it's hard with high school because every time a Pick and Save opens or there's something else, because they're open campus schools for lunch, that's hard for us, and we'll see those declines sometimes. I think it was was it by South or West? I think it was by South if that Pick and Save opened recently. There was what opened over by South recently in the last year or two. Something opened up where all the kids were going to, and we definitely saw,
Yeah, Pick and Save's been there a long time, but there
Yeah.
could be something else in the strip malls that,
yeah, there's also so many things over there at South that kids can go to in 5 minutes or less. But it's great to see that we're having the increase in lunches there. Okay, so this is just overall numbers. Compared to last year, we served 3,431 less meals this year, so 364,950 to 368,381. If you average that as a meal per service day, we're down 62 meals per day. We don't want to see negative growth, but I think we're doing pretty successfully compared to we're beating the curve on the decline enrollment that we're seeing. So, like you see at the bottom there, it's not up there anymore. Our enrollment was down 3.22%, but our meals per day were only down 0.94%. So I feel good about that.
Yep, absolutely.
This is most of the meals-related data that we have. Is there any questions on any of that we've gone through so far?
No, I like the data we're a data-driven group, so
Yep.
being able to see it, and understandably, when you start to look at the enrollment declines and understanding those pieces, I think when I take a step back, 3 years back, okay, we were at a very different point in time with the contract, with our service, with the food offerings, with the enrollment and what we're getting, and I think the story really has evolved to the quality of food that we're bringing in. The enrollment decline, so the data parts that you're looking at are driven, and I'm less concerned about necessarily that because of that. So you can centralize and stabilize and trend things out with an enrollment drop, but the interest still seems to be growing. We're starting to see some great value with the pods, and a lot of the take on all of that. And I think the story really needs to go back to the quality of what we are feeding our children, and the education for their little brains to grow is really important. And that's a story to talk, and then how do we continue to engage? I like seeing what we're seeing at West. I think a year ago, we were getting ready to embrace South's pod with the discussion at other high schools. So where are we enrolling the additional services and features out?
yeah, the west area that we talked about for the breakfast was our idea for a pod, and right now it's being used for that. And the nice thing was it was turnkey. It was there, the outlets were even there, everything worked right. So we have walked the building a couple of times looking for a spot. South was easy because you had natural widening of the hallway there, so the fire department gets involved. And where that pod can even go, you just can't place it in any hallway anywhere. That's not allowed. We actually just met with North admin in, say, early November. We think we have a spot where that can be, but also it has to go into a space. It can't be in the hallway. But we think we've identified a spot where that could work there. And then for West, we were really kind of waiting to see what void that what we're using now that used to be the hamburger place or whatever. And what's left there in terms of what the demand might be. And is it worth the investment of the pod to do that if we have this space already, and can we maximize that to essentially become a pod by default, I guess?
Yep, and I will say too, there's kind of mini versions of the newer pods, if you will. So if the one that we're currently using, if that will suffice, that's great. Otherwise, there is the option too for kind of like not as big as, I think it's on your next slide, but not as big as the current new pod, if you will. There's, again, you can kind of customize these so that they're 1 stall, 2 stall, 3, whatever the case is, if the space is smaller. So they're all custom designed and made. So again, if the current one that's sitting there that we've been able to repurpose ends up being useful, that's great. Otherwise, we could also work with the district to kind of customize one that fits the space.
But I think that at North and West, there would be significant upside to see on it. The place that we had looked at North is right when you walk in, which is, especially for breakfast, is a huge boon to have just that visibility of kids that are normally skipping breakfast, but if it's right in front of their face. And I know that educators like when their kids are fed in the morning, there's a lot less
Yep.
staff to deal with those.
And then it
kids
can be,
behaviorally.
kind of grab and go. The Gravity kind of hot slider can be full of, breakfast sandwiches and whatever the case may be. I think sometimes with grab and go cold breakfast, which sometimes that's the only thing we're able to do, just depending on the infrastructure at the school. And, maybe time to eat, but sometimes those can be some of the higher sugary items, if you will. So again, the ability to be able to offer a hot breakfast and hot hold food at an entrance, especially to a high school. We know that kids are enticed by a full breakfast sandwich that they could get, even hash brown rounds, whatever the case is, that are baked, not deep fried. But the ability to kind of offer meals like that, especially at a high school entrance, is incredible. So.
Yeah, and we're ready to move forward and make that work whenever, it works for the district with timing and getting that in. But yeah, we're ready to go and would be happy to move forward with that.
Yep.
So I touched on the pod a little bit before. You can see that South has the biggest meal growth of any high school. The pod is helping grow that. It's been, I think, a resounding success. I think some of the issues like theft or things like that were initial concerns or fears before putting it in haven't really materialized. I don't ever hear about that or having behavioral issues or disruption in the hallway from anybody over there.
Yeah, I've not had any complaints. Maybe right out of the gate, but I think we were also working on traffic pattern and some other things.
Yeah.
I think we might have added one security camera to cover it a little more closely, but was never in response to a major issue.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I've heard anything related to that. It's
Yeah.
an extended period of time.
A lot of times hearing nothing is the best thing to hear. Yep. Any other questions on numbers or meals? Okay. Just wanted to throw some pictures out of, the kind of food that we're serving. Donut Day is super popular in the elementary schools when we do that, and our staff really likes taking the time to sprinkle the donuts and make them look nice. Some different sites will do them or frost them different ways or decorate them differently, and the kids like that, and the staff likes doing that too. But just some examples of some things we're putting out on a daily basis. It looks like a better McRib than McDonald's to me. This is the salad bar at, I believe this is South. This is where this is. I just wanted you to see that we are doing our best, I think, put a good-looking, healthy product out. In research that you'll see in surveys or what Aramark's done, one of the trends is kids are getting a lot more interested in eating healthy, I think, on their own. And we want to be able to provide that as much as we can. It takes a lot of labor and effort to cut all those things and prep them for a salad bar and have backups for when they run out and all that. But it has been something I think the kids really enjoy. And I feel proud walking in and we have a nice salad bar. It looks like one you would see at a restaurant that you pay for. The kids have good options and it's utilized, which is great.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you think about this being, part of a reimbursable meal, again, the kids would still be able to get a milk or a protein, whatever it is with it, but to be able to get this for either, free or 40 cents if you're a reduced kid, or I'm not sure exactly what your paid lunch is right now at the high school, but again, $3 or whatever it is just really incredible. When you think about, again, if they're going to go down the street to a grocery store or Whole Foods or any of that type of, where you see a bar like this, it's really great that kids are, I think this speaks to participation and kind of the freshness of the food. And also, part of what Earmark does is study food trends to understand what students want, nationwide and specifically in the Midwest. And so, again, we really try to tailor our offerings and our menus to what we know students love. So.
I want to give us a picture of Halloween celebration over at Les Paul. They like to have a lot of fun over there. But yeah, just more pictures of food. I know you're not in schools, so wanted to give you an idea of, these are things that we're just putting out daily. These aren't food photo shoots we did or anything like that. We get pictures from our leads every week that they send to Jill, our executive chef, things that they're proud of, things that they like serving. So this isn't gussied up. It's just pictures of the plate that happened to be there already. One thing that Molly did mention was us doing a lot of menu testing or trend testing. You see a lot of that in our monthly limited offerings. It's a time where the food gets a little bit more interesting just because it's a one-time thing. It doesn't have to sit on a rotating menu. We get to explore the flavors a little bit. And they generally have a very good reception from kids. And I think it does break up the, I don't want to call it monotony because our menus are pretty big and varied, but they
Yeah.
do like saying, oh, I haven't seen this before and I might not see it again. We do see some increased participation around those days as well.
Yep. So we have a team of chefs kind of nationwide called our Culinary Alliance that you can see referenced here. And they're able to craft recipes that are, again, K-12 compliant, meet the student nutrition requirements, but again, offer something kind of different and also going along with kind of studying food trends. So this, like the gochujang hot honey sandwich as an example, we know that kind of one of the trends now is like spicy, sweet and spicy food. So again, the idea really is to craft things that we know kids will like. And again, they still have their other 3 to 4 to 5 other entrees to choose from. Doesn't mean they have to take this, but the idea is that we offer it for a week's time. And, if it goes over well, we can put it on our monthly menu. We can bring it back, in a couple months, whatever the case is. I think the jalapeno popper burger is next week, I believe, in December.
Yes, I believe that's next week.
Yep. And then there's one per month. So you can see the spring is January through May that we do these. So again, the waffle-aco is something that was actually trademarked by Aramark. So last year it was a different kind of variety of a waffle-aco, but the idea is that it's a waffle folded like a taco and then usually drizzled with something. In this case here, it's kind of a spicy buffalo sandwich. So again,
It's like a
just
sweet and
something-
spicy last year when we did
Yes, it was like maple,
hot honey and
maple,
pepper.
hot honey maple or something glazed. But anyway, again, the idea is just to get kids excited about food trends that are going on and get them to try something different.
So moving forward, where growth opportunities, a lot of these will be fairly similar to what we're seeing last year, what we were doing last year, just got to lean on them. One thing that I think that would be helpful to try and get into more elementary schools would be to see if any schools would want to adopt breakfast in the classroom, which is where you would start to see very large breakfast growth by doing that. It's a tightrope of, and you could probably speak to this more than I, of balancing getting breakfast into every classroom, which is great, but then the teachers have to do it. It's another thing teachers have to do. They're already, worked hard and they have a lot of responsibilities. So that's really down to one-on-one conversations with what principals are comfortable taking on. I don't have experience with selling that into a new school yet, but I know that there is sometimes some hesitation.
Yep, we usually see the overall kind of industry average nationwide that we see actually really within our region is usually around a 22% participation jump. Again, depending on free and reduced percentages and kind of the demographics of a district. But when we do move breakfast into a classroom, again, it's mainly meant for kind of an elementary school just to bring it to them and make it convenient. It's not something that, we push too much for because we know that in some schools it just doesn't work, but it is an option and it's something that we're able to do and always consider whether it's a principal conversation or whoever's involved to kind of help make that decision. But again, we typically, when we follow those stories through, it's usually hovers around that 22% growth in participation.
So for middle and high school, I think one of the biggest things that we could do would be to expand the pods into West and North, because we have seen that working well at South. One thing that we have been, it has been an issue a little bit, I think, in past years, and we're more well-staffed this year than we were last year, but still getting staff and making sure people show up every day so all the stations can be open is a big thing, because the more variety there is, especially at the middle school, high school level, that's where a station would be closed if somebody was out that day. That's key to keeping up participation. So we're pretty well staffed, like more than we have been in the past, and I feel good about where we were, but people call out, things like that. So that's a little bit of an uphill battle at the higher grade levels. So stabilizing that a little bit, I think we would be able to see some more participation from there. Jill really wants to get into doing more like pop-ups, like a noodle bar, ramen bars, things like that. There are a lot of options that we can offer. It feels like the first 3 months of the school year is kind of running around and putting out fires to make sure that everyone's running smoothly, but as we move into the next year, Jill generally has more time to start doing more of those things, and that's what she enjoys doing. She likes cooking and serving food to kids and not putting out fires and being stressed out all the time. So that's everyone's goal, to try and get there, and we'll get there this year. It's just a question of the time needed to get into that and get flowing smoothly. And that's what we have. Any questions or follow-up from anybody?
Are there materials available to, I guess, help educate our students on their food choices, to make better choices? Like, is that posted on the pod? I mean, looking at the photos of the pods or anywhere along there, like, is there any signage to kind of help guide better choices?
Yeah, we typically have like kind of like what makes a meal signage that's posted. It's typically required signage, and then we also have kind of some various PDF educational type documents. A lot of times it's geared towards like an elementary school student, educating them on various fruits and vegetables and what's good for them, and various micronutrients that they might be excited about that are in those fruits and veggies or whatever they're eating for the day. We can look at what's available for kind of the middle, high school. Usually when we have kind of paper available, if you will, kids are usually not taking it. We could look at some signage and just kind of like general education. We certainly have some things, so just a matter of finding a good place for it and making sure that kids can see it and things like that. So absolutely.
Need a sign that makes them eat their fruit or vegetable.
Yeah.
We have to give a half cup of fruit or vegetable
Yeah.
to every kid every day, and it would be great if so many more kids actually ate what they're making on their tray is a healthy, well-balanced meal. What makes it into their mouth at the end of that is unfortunately out of our control.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I saw early in the presentation, one of the biggest challenges was the food waste, and I was going to ask if that's beforehand or afterhand. If you can get it on their plate, are they consuming it, or is it?
Yeah, I would say with the fruits and vegetables, it's a much lower, take-up rate than you want it to be.
Yeah.
One thing that the elementary principals had brought up, and we had looked at a little bit in the past, was doing share tables at the end, because there's so many kids that take an orange, and if they could throw it out right after they walk by, they would, because they're like, I'm not going to eat that. We try and encourage you to share it with people, but there are DPI rules around.
Yes.
Do you have any districts with share tables?
Yeah. Yep. Racine does them. I'm trying to think of who else. There is a very strict DPI policy around it. It's possible to implement. It's just the idea of like if a student put their milk there or a perishable item as an example, and then another student consumed it and it had been sitting out and was not safe to consume. There's just kind of like some liability around
Yeah.
that. So, and germs, right? Like a student, we don't typically wrap our fruits and veggies are typically like ready to consume. So as an apple, as an example, a student touches it and then the next kid eats it without washing it. And like, so there can be kind of some combative things that, make it difficult to implement share tables, which shouldn't be the case, but we can. It's just a matter of having. It can also be school by school if one principal wants it, but the other one doesn't. It's doable, and then sometimes even kids that bring their food from home end up putting stuff on it too. But yeah, from a waste perspective, we typically monitor it also like from a production perspective to make sure that we're not overproducing. Again, that would be on Aramark's dime anyway, but we certainly don't want food waste for so many different reasons, and especially with base kitchens and things like that, we have the challenges of making sure that we're on par without also running out of food, and kind of knowing the buffer of overproducing but not wasting. So some of that is just kind of some science that goes into the numbers. But then yes, from what goes on a student's tray and what they consume, is kind of another conversation. But even sometimes waste studies by school principals or faculty want to take that on, and that's something that we're open to as well. What are kids throwing away, and why? Should we take certain things off the menu or whatever the case may be? So
I want to just follow up, and I think about like when you guys visit next year. I've been involved with the Aramark transition since I've been on the board, so I'm in year 4. So I'm very in tune to the history and where we've been with all of those things, and just really a great progress going forward. The metrics are important, but so are a lot of the key initiatives that we talked about from the ground floor level when we went through the contract negotiation, which was the QR codes, the in-school sessions, the how are we doing the community groups, what are we doing for the feedback. The pictures are amazing. I think we've got a really good grasp on what they're seeing, and there are days that I look here and I want to go eat at the high school lunches, right? But I think I really want to make sure that we're taking a bigger picture at what it is that we're doing. How is the growth? What are we doing to engage? I'd like to see us do the pods. They have a really good response. And we've seen that through the data as to what are we doing to better service and offer into our students. and making sure that next year when we come here, we're not, these are all the things that we talked about committing and trying to do and grow, and understanding we can only do so much within the realm of trying to get food to our kids. But I do like hearing the what are we doing and paying attention to Mr. Harlan's point on, is there different opportunities that we're addressing the percentage of waste? Is there things that we're seeing that here's what's working, here's what's not working, and saying we're paying, a really good pulse on what is happening and what is working and what is not, because that also drives utilization.
Yeah.
So I just want us to be aware of that
Yeah.
when we come next year, I would like to see a little bit more oomph on, like, here's what we've learned, here's what we're growing, because where we've taken this has been very good.
And we do a student survey every year, which I tried to look in it the other day. I think we have to find last year's results.
Sure, yep.
But we
The
do a
spring.
student survey every year. We had one of the bigger participation rates.
Yeah,
I think,
you
of
did.
your,
Yep.
here in the district, which was nice. We also do a principal survey every year. Our scores were up year over year on the principal survey, which is good. That's
Yep.
always good to hear.
Yep.
But we are reaching out. We are doing that. We've had at least one, or we've had one listening session with parents from the superintendent's council, which was fantastic. We had a great meeting, and we'll definitely be back in the spring to do that, to present again, because I think it was really nice hearing the questions from the parents themselves, from the representatives from each school. That was, I think, a fantastic, but we took way too much time. We blew through your agenda. I apologize. But that was a great meeting that we had, and we'll definitely be doing that again.
Anything? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for having
you.
us.
We'll update the slide and send
Thank
back
you.
out. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
All right, our next discussion or information item for this evening is the 2026-27 budget development.
Yeah, attached in board docs is, we go through the preliminary budget assumptions, and then I'll report back out in January and give our annual long-term forecast. But I also put in there some other information to kind of close out what happened this year. And the Waukesha County tax levy comparisons there for the K-12 school districts. Arrowhead, remember, has all the feeders and everything, so it's hard to get an Arrowhead tax rate and levy, but if you wanted to see the changes by school district, they're there. I also have our ADM graph. We certainly have talked a lot about enrollment, and we have for many years. And that leads us into the preliminary budget assumptions. And I know this might look like a small piece of paper to have all these assumptions to project out for a $200 million a year operation, but when looking at our operational fund, the items, for example, listed under the revenue, that's about almost 90% of our operational revenue that's being generated every year. Then the other 10% or 12% really doesn't move a whole lot. So again, resident enrollment, as we've talked about numerous times, is the biggest driver. We're funded on a per case or per student basis. So we're once again going to project a 2% drop in the average daily membership from last year's third Friday of September pupil count, which had a result of 10,396 students. So we're on a K-12 basis looking at a reduction of 208 resident students. Again, that doesn't mean who's being taught in our classes. This is the number of resident kids on that day in September. Revenue limit authority, we'll be entering the second year of the state biennial budget, and we'll once again, based on how it's written now, we'll get the $325 revenue limit per resident student multiplier increase. Right now, we're at 11,656. Open enrollment, those amounts are approximate numbers, but normally DPI is pretty accurate in that, so they are adjusting again. So we'll be getting 11,030 for regular ed and $14,882 for any open enrollment kids in, but we're also paying that for any students who leave, so keep that in mind. We've talked in a few presentations this fall. I think we did it at the budget hearing and then at FNF. We're still a positive open enrollment school district, mainly because of e-achieve, but that gap is reducing over the last few years. So what I've done in the past is I use the previous year's number of students, but then as we start seeing more enrollment data coming in, we adjust our assumption at this time. As time goes on and better data is available. Per pupil aid, this has been around less than a decade, I'd say about 7 years. And it is exactly what it says. We get $742 per resident kid. That allocation or allotment per student is not changing under the state biennial budget. But what does change when we look at last year's budget to what we'll present, or I should say this year's budget and what we'll present looking forward, is the declining enrollment. So that budget of revenue is declining not because of the allocation per dollars per kid, it's the number of kids being counted in our, going back to the 2% drop that we started with. So that one continues to drop year after year. And then at this phase in the budget building process, we really don't get into what the tax levy's looking like. Those conversations will come later in spring. Keep in mind that we'll be paying off our debt, so Fund 39 levy we know is going to be dropping to zero in fiscal year 26-27. This is a heads up. In February, I'll be bringing forth the resolution to call the bonds, and that'll go through here, and then we'll need full board approval at our February meeting cycle because we have to give 30 days notice to investors that the bonds are being called. So to hit that timeline of August or April 1st, February will be our action month for those. Expenses, obviously, we're a service industry, so about 75% of our costs are tied up into people. CPI estimate, as the last I saw, is projected to be, I think, a little below 3%, but around 3% for wage adjustments for our unionized staff, which is just the teachers group, but we use that as kind of the benchmark when we talk about the other groups as well. So we're projecting that as of now. That final number will be calculated in early 2026, and then we can get into actually costing out scenarios for bargaining for the 26-27 school year. Health insurance, how we've handled this in the past is, I usually say we'll project out a 5% increase in health insurance, but that doesn't mean that's the end of our health insurance conversation. It's just allowing us to project. If it's higher than that in the past, we've brought it down to 5%. In years where things were tighter, we dropped it even lower than 5%. So it's really just a placeholder to allow us to have a conversation in January and February about what the long-term budget outlook is. We're not assuming any dental insurance rate increase for 26-27. Student transportation, as you all know, certainly, we have a bus contract that runs through 2030. That's a win. So we'll apply the contracted increases. I can't remember what the percentage is off the top of my head, but we'll incorporate that into the projection. Utilities, we're looking at 7% right now. But I'll be putting something in the Friday update. We've invested in a new software package that allows us to really monitor utility usage to a much higher degree of detail than we have in the past. And what the software allows us to do is there's peak day charges during our operational day, but we're running on the school calendar, so we really have never really been able to maneuver around those. That software allows us to do that a lot more effectively. We've been using the software, the only month of data I saw, we had a $20,000 savings in charges. So I'd like to say, well, we're going to extrapolate that over every month. We're going to do that. We don't have enough data to prove that yet, but what also that software will allow us to do is drill down into how much electricity is food service program costing us, to allow us to really get into a better conversation of what's the true cost of the food service program. You can also use it for facility use if we want to get in for our larger users, and we can actually calculate out what their time allotments can be. So I think once we get a year of data in there and kind of some benchmark data, that we'll really be maximizing, or at least having conversations of what that can do. The parental choice programs, 15% has kind of been my benchmark, the dollar increase. And I'd like to think it's kind of maturing where you can actually develop a trend line but it's also eventually a dinner table decision by a lot of families across the state of Wisconsin, right? So again, that's kind of a cost neutral. We'll we'll be able to have that incorporated into the revenue limit, but then we are also billed the expenditure at the end of the year. So it's really budget neutral, but when you start talking about the tax levy and things like that, you need to have a placeholder number of what's going into the revenue limit calculation. As I mentioned earlier, we're assuming that the call date will be utilized for April 1st to pay off our long-term debt. And then I thought I should add this footnote that, you know, the initial projection we're going to do is on this year's operation moving forward. And as once we start gathering more data on staffing and things part of the optimizing conversations, we'll start incorporating that and updating our projection. But I think we needed to get out the gate like we normally do in early January. So those are the assumptions. I always run through them with F and F just so when we present the actual projection, we've all kind of bought into a set, because you could run scenarios until the end of time. So I usually think this is a pretty good process. So if there's any questions or other areas of the budget you might have, I'm here to answer those.
The only other item I had on here is just the special ed reimbursement, because that's different, right? So the impact that will have to the general fund, which this is just to kind of consider that in from where we end this
That's a
year
good add.
to where we project that to go.
Yeah, as you know, we budgeted 3% off the percentage that was publicized when the state budget. Now, based on what we saw, I think you're budgeting, again, off of what was get all excited about during the state approval. I think you're down into that 6-7% off of that pace based on the initial round of handicap aid payouts. Now that number could change slightly. It could go up a little bit because they're still getting audited results from last year. So, you know, there's still data coming in. I can't believe that there's enough data out there to bring it up to 39% where we budgeted. But maybe it's 36, but I think wherever that final number come in, was it go to 45 in year two? I think you're
Way lower.
probably in that 38, 39% that we would actually budget. But that's a good add to this list. I'll make a note of that.
Mr. Wad?
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that. So, Darren, based on the estimates that we had, based on the legislation that passed and where we think we're at now, are we actually seeing much of an increase in special ed reimbursement from the state?
Yeah, we budgeted 39%. Now, I'm just looking up what. So last year in handicap aid, oops, one page off. We received roughly 8.6 million, and then we assumed 39% rate reimbursement rate, which drove us up to almost 11.8 million. So it was a significant increase. But if they stay at the 35% payout rate that I shared the article with the board a few updates ago, I believe the loss is $1.2 million, roughly. So it's still an increase, but
Not anywhere near the magnitude that we were led to believe it might be.
no, it's rough to get a $1.2 million hole in your budget about 2 weeks after the board adopts it finally in October. So, but again, it was a major win even at that, but certainly not, hopefully people recognize my unwillingness to accept that number that was being publicized during the biennial budget process because it never holds.
Could you speak to what is driving the estimation downwards? Why do we think it's going to be less?
Yeah, what happens is they either use the prior year's budget or budgeted numbers. But what ends up happening is that by using, so when I say prior year before their discussions, so when they actually so they allocate a certain amount of money, right? Let's just say it's $1 million for easy math. But what happens is when the prior year that your aid's actually calculated on, there's a lot more costs there. So the denominator that's going to be used to spread out that $1 million, it just doesn't hold. It just gets spread over more and more costs across all the school districts in the state of Wisconsin. So it's a set pattern. I do recognize that when they're adopting that pool of money, they're using the data they have at that time. So there is some, but I also think if I was doing that in terms of public releases, I would factor in like a 3% increase in those costs or what the historical average is, and then talk about the percentage. But no one's called me from Madison to ask me how we should go about doing that. So, and keep in mind, one good thing, it kind of ties into the transportation thing, we've done some shifting too to take advantage, and I think more accurately, to our costs. So there is a good side to that increase, that's driving part of that bump in the budget as well, and that was our doing here, so I think it was a win.
Worth noting, though, I think that this is just another example of data we're getting months after our fiscal year starts that makes it completely impossible for us to nail down the costs, and we start a budget before we've ever had a chance to approve it because we're statutorily required to.
Okay, seeing no other questions, the next discussion item for this evening is the monthly budget report.
Thank you. So we did have some larger expenditures this month that I did want to bring to your attention. Total mechanical was north of $1 million. I reached out to Kyle McCarthy, the facilities manager. He stated that these invoices were for the HVAC upgrades at Waukesha South. It included the academic wings and the field house. And he stated that a nice fact about it, of course, was the utilization of the guaranteed maximum plus, which allowed them to keep the project well below budget. Richardson School, the invoice that you see there for $231,971 is for the October alternative placement seats. There were 24 seats that were paid for. First student, the costs there were related to the October regular ed and special ed routes, along with the efficiency clause. It was a total of $730,000 in excess of that. And then the Airmark bill that came through was for the September services for Airmark, and the total was in excess of $475,000. If there are any other questions or anything else that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay, seeing none, that puts us into our other business for the evening. The first item being recommendations for future committee meetings. Okay. We do have a need to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Would need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Wad, second by Mr. Harland. Honey, can you take the roll call, please?
Mr. Harlan?
Aye.
Dr. Passick?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Aye. We are going into closed session, and I do not believe we need to adjourn again. So our next FNF meeting is on January 12th of 2026, and we will reconvene on Wednesday for the full board meeting, but for FNF, we'll see everyone next year.